All right, good day, everyone. Welcome to The Gray Matters, where we discuss more than just the hot topics and headlines of the day from a Black man's perspective. We understand and appreciate that we are not all a monolith, and all topics deserve to be explored from all sides of the conversation with nuance, class, and hopefully a little fun that we can bring you every week when we come together like this. And as always, you will find out just how much we love each other in spite of our sometimes very, very big differences. I'm Billy Craig, and I'm joining you today on location from the great city of Louisville, Kentucky. And today I'm joined by the usual suspects. My buddy Hefty Smurf is down in Nashville, Tennessee. And the great Gargamel in the great city of Portland. And today we have our special guest that's going to be joining us, coming all the way from the sun. Yes, the sun, also known as Houston, Texas. Our friend Jyoti Iyer, who's going to be bringing us her perspective. Welcome to the Terror Dome, Jyoti. How are you?
I'm well. It's a Friday. So thank you for having me on your show.
All right.
And you're right about Houston being the sun. It is.
Oh, no. Yeah, I meant what I said. It's
5 million degrees out here.
Oh, my goodness. I was reading some of the headlines. They were talking about how it's weird how this pattern, even where Paul is out on the west, it's like there's like almost like a U shape where it's like the entire border of the country, except for like the Canada part, everything is scorching hot. Arizona, Nevada, California.
I mean, it's hot. It's hot for us, but if you lived in Florida for 10 years, I'm chilling. Like it's, they out here complaining about the mid 80s. I'm like,
Nah. When I lived we lived in Corpus Christi for a little while, and that was and we were literally moving from Atlanta, Georgia. In Atlanta, obviously, it gets hot, but it was different in Texas. The spiciness of it all was a little worse. In fact, first time I ever had this, I didn't even know what happened. I had a heat stroke because I was trying to lose weight, and I was out on the beach in the middle of the afternoon.
In your Speedo?
Listen, when I tell you, I wish I had a Speedo on. Maybe I would have had a heat stroke. But I was out there trying to lose weight. And I was like, oh, ain't nobody else out here. This is a great time to go work out and run on the beach. Because everybody had enough sense to be indoors with me.
Brainy Smurf.
Yeah, I was reading for. Yes, well, there you have it. There you have it. Yes.
Oh my gosh.
All right.
We ready to start now that we done finally got the insults going.
All right.
Oh man. Well, we have decided to tackle the second portion of our health conversation this week. Last time we had the physical health, but we always thought that the mental health aspect was always an important conversation to have. So we decided to ask a female perspective, as well as we needed somebody to make the room look better. So we appreciate Jyoti for stepping in and being willing to have this conversation. She has a passion. She revealed to us that she has a passion for mental health. So this will be a perfect conversation to have. So I definitely appreciate you, or on behalf of us, we appreciate you taking the time to do this. Let's go ahead and get started. So we'll start off as customary, ladies first on this one. With just a basic question. I know this sounds like a lob question, but we want to start it off and we'll dig deeper after that. So what do you like? Why do you think mental health is important? Is where we'll just start and we'll run with it from there.
Well, I think, personally, I think it's very important because it's such an important aspect of our overall health. And, personally, I have seen mental health issues in my family. I've, in close family members, among friends. And personally, I also, go through depression and anxiety from time to time. And, if untreated, if without the right social support, mental health can, it has a lot of impact on society, on social functioning, and even on the economy. Like, did you know $200 billion a year is lost in the economy just because of mental health issues? And so that's because of disability, lack of productivity, and just because, there's a huge stigma when it comes to mental health and mental health issues. And so I feel like it's very important for us to acknowledge this and not to ignore it and sweep it under the rug, because that's what a lot of people end up doing because of the stigma. So
I dig it. So based on that, and I'm gonna spin it to Billy real quick. So based on the information that she just laid out for us is a perfect tee up for this. So Billy, you are in a unique situation because of the role that you play in the church, and how mental health is dealt with. I guess we use dealt with in air quotes by the church. What do you like? What are some of the things that you see as far as the mental health space and how the church plays a role or doesn't play a role in that?
I'm reminded of a conversation I was having with a really good friend of mine not too long ago. There is a passage for anybody interested in 1 John chapter 4. It's often quoted verse where it says, "All good things come from God." Right? And I don't want to lose the context in it, but that's the passage the verse that everybody quotes. And yet, what I find troubling about the church broadly, not any particular congregation, but broadly, is that too often people are under this misconception that you go get therapy, you go get help from a professional outside of your faith or your relationship with God, not realizing God gave you the ability to go and seek professional help. If my foot was broken or if I was having trouble with back pain, I wouldn't say, no, I'm just going to wait for the Lord to heal it, or I'm going to pray about it and let some divine intervention kick in. No, I'm going to take my divine intervention is going to be that $20 copay, and I'm going to go to the doctor. Or if my child is sick, I'm not going to leave it up to, well, we're just going to fast and pray. That is not what those tools, you might say, are designed for. And yet too often people, I think, since you brought it up about church, one of the things that I'm going to be speaking on throughout the month of August is shame culture, and how too often people are manipulated and controlled and frankly diminished because of shame. And I think the stigma of therapy and mental health, like I can tell you right now, his name is Antoine. That's a guy who's been working with me all last year, especially really helping me get through some really difficult times with my own anxiety and depression. My son, who's a teenager now, he was really having a rough patch. My kids, my daughter's almost a teenager, but they really had a hard time after COVID. They never really quite came out of COVID the same way they went in. And, I'm not above it. Not only am I not above it, I encourage it. And I encourage it especially for people to realize, and I don't even just mean like go find a Christian counselor. No, that's garbage. Go find somebody who is qualified, who's actually done the work, and who is capable to come from a different perspective to hopefully help you be able to see that some of the reason why you don't see God and you don't see faith and you don't really have a good spiritual grounding is because of a lot of baggage and a lot of hurts and traumas. We don't call them traumas, but really they're traumas. I know a lot of the anger issues I had to work through, they were things that came from my childhood. It didn't have anything to do with the church. It didn't have anything to do with what I read in the scriptures. It was things that I needed to be able to process and work through. And that isn't something we should be ashamed of. And it certainly doesn't mean that if you need therapy that, well, you don't have faith or God's not with you or God's not real. Those are two mutually exclusive things. And I think that, frankly, the church community needs to do a better job of encouraging that. And you wouldn't see so much hurt. you might say, in those circles.
Right. So normally we don't do the round table format. We normally just have an interactive conversation. But since we already started, I'm gonna pass the last question to Paul before we
we don't want to feel left out.
No, go ahead. I mean,
give us the faith perspective.
Be honest,
Paul.
I don't even know if I'm qualified to answer the questions in the way that you two are. I got more questions like Dre. I got questions. So yeah, I'll give it a go. Hey, man,
I just have one question. Then, like I said, we're gonna start a conversation because this feels a little weird. I'm not a game show host. But I will say, Paul, with you being in Portland,
right?
And let's just go ahead and be honest, Portland's on the news a lot.
It's wild out here. It's wild out here.
Do you find out there? And now, what's crazy is you came from Utah to there, so there's two different dynamics totally working there. But since you've gotten out there in the West Coast, is a little bit different. Have you seen it been like a call to attention for mental health, or how are people dealt with out there?
Well, you got mental health is kind of like a wide umbrella. So in Portland, we got like a huge drug problem. Like to the point where this is the idea they came up with a couple weeks ago that they were going to hand out crack pipes and foil and syringes.
No.
In order, they spent 90 grand on this.
They spent money to give people crack pipes and needles?
Yeah, well, before they gave them out, like somebody literally no, we cannot do this. But they literally bought the crack pipes, they bought foil, they bought syringes in order to try to draw the addiction, the people under addiction into safe places to get high or handle state cleaner drugs, that whole thing, because we had a law out here where drugs, personal drugs, even hard drugs, was decriminalized. So
there are cities, now that you mention it, okay, I understand what you're talking about. There are cities that have tried,
it's wild out here,
where especially out there where they've tried to. I've heard of several cities done this where they basically, it's almost like
under America. I've heard of them in Europe.
It's almost like under a doctor's care, basically. Like,
right,
you gonna get high, come over here so we can make sure that you don't go into defib or cardiac arrest or something after you get your Jones. And it's like, but yeah, I've heard of a few cities that have done that, and it didn't work. But
no, it's never gonna work.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have a bunch of obviously homeless and tent encampments and things like that. So obviously we have a mental health situation out here on a large scale, in the same way say in Los Angeles or in Oakland, if you've ever been there, or San Francisco. Like it's a different type of thing. Salt Lake City had a situation like that for a while, where cities from the West Coast were busing their mentally ill patients into Salt Lake City because it was a sanctuary city for a while, and they were mad aggressive. It wasn't like, can you spare $1? It was like,
I know you got 20,
or I know you got something, and I have like a knife, so give it to me, right? Like, it wasn't like there was a fine line between panhandling and robbing people going on in Salt Lake City for a while. It was crazy.
Wow.
And it's kind of like that out here in Portland. So, and again, like I said, it's mental health. I'm just experiencing it as a whole novice, an empath, just trying to see people as humans. But, I have, like I said, way more questions than answers.
Got it. All right. So now that we've made it all the way around the horn here, let's go ahead and start the conversation. So we'll go back to Jyoti real quick, just for one question, because as a male, I can't answer this question. So typically we cut things or think of things through the black male perspective. But just for the purpose of this conversation, is mental health like more accepted amongst women that you find versus men?
That's a very good question. So I think there's a gender difference in how it's seen and treated, and also cultural difference. I'm Indian. I'm originally from India, and what I've seen in Indian communities is that there's whether you're a man or a woman, there's a complete lack of acknowledgement of mental health issues. It's gotten slightly better with my generation, I guess, but still, and I think it's a lot better now. There's a lot more openness and awareness and talking about it. But in America specifically, men do suffer from mental health issues as well, but it goes unreported a lot more than women. So it's really hard to tell the difference, because women also end up building a really good social support system. We do what's called tend and befriend, and so we're more available with our social support networks. And when it comes to just, opening up, it's easier, I think, for women to open up than for men to open up. And so I think that is the challenge in destigmatizing male mental health. And I've seen this in my dad when he got laid off several years ago. And we're talking about 25 years ago. I know he went through depression, after being employed with a major multinational in India. But he just didn't talk about it because it wasn't considered right as a man to, you're just supposed to be stoic and go through with whatever you're going through and deal with it. And so I recognize the symptoms when I look back. And so I think it's easier for women to be more open about our issues than it is for men to be. And men suffer through depression, anxiety, bipolar, schizophrenia, psychosis, eating disorders. There are statistics to support that.
Let me ask you a question since we're on the topic, because one of the things that you were talking about, specifically like talking about your dad, we've kind of been in this season that we're on, we've been talking a lot about the patriarchy, and that word gets thrown around a lot.
Weaponized even.
Weaponized. That's a more thank you, Paul. It gets weaponized to the point that it gets thrown around so much that it almost has lost its significance, in my opinion, because I feel like people who don't even understand it and have never done the research, they've never really paid attention to it, they use it in a weaponizing fashion. But I bring that up because as you were talking about your dad, I was thinking about my dad, all right, men of a certain age. And you mentioned how even like with you, in our generation, it's gotten better. But I think about how, as Andre was setting up that question, one of the things culturally that, and I don't think it's unique to the United States, it's pretty universal. Men have a difficult time opening up and being vulnerable about a lot of things because weaknesses and vulnerability are almost always synonymous with weakness. Like, you're soft, you're not tough, you can't handle it. And so I wonder, just from your perspective as a woman, and I'm just going to, cut to the chase. Do you find yourself, and I guess this is a hypothetical, I don't know if maybe you can share personal stories, but do you find yourself more or less attracted to men who are able to open up and be vulnerable if they're going through a rough patch, if they're depressed, if they're going through anxiety? Or would that be a turnoff? Like, you know what? I don't really trust that this man is stable, or I don't trust that he is in a position where he's able to support me and kind of be that backbone and support that we need to be able to go through life together. How does that factor into how you view men and how you perceive them if they're open? And I say that only because I tend to be, and I've generally always been like this, I tend to be pretty open and vulnerable and comfortable in my own skin. And that's actually been, to Paul's word, weaponized. That's backfired on me a lot. Now, this is obviously before I was married and, when it mattered. But sometimes women, they'll say they want that, but they don't always seem to value that. And I wonder where you come from on, where you come down on that.
So my experience with that is I have dated, people in the past with mental health issues, and my perspective on that is, as long as, well, I can be a support system in the sense that I'll be a supportive presence, but I do expect the other person to do the work in terms of like get therapy, and and also like work with me on building a good social support system, because it is not possible for one person, even as a significant other, to shoulder all the whole mental health issue in a relationship. And so I will say it's not a turn off for me. I do appreciate men who are open and vulnerable about their issues, but I also need to see that they are working on it and not just using it as a pop out. So I come from a very patriarchal system in India, which
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Of course, yeah.
So you don't get much more patriarchal than that.
You don't, exactly. But in India we also have several subcultures, because India is not a monolith either.
Right.
And so you have we have I think 30, 35 different languages in India that are spoken.
Yes.
Each language has its own culture. And so I come from from the South Indian culture, where women are considered more equal to men than other cultures in India. We are stronger. We are, some could even say we are matriarchal in some ways.
Okay.
So, we have no issues. And, we did fight for equality. And equality means that, it doesn't mean that it's, equal only when it's convenient. Part of destroying, I guess, patriarchal norms and patriarchy, something that people don't understand about patriarchy is that it also affects men negatively, because
Yes.
traditionally it has put a lot of pressure on men, to perform in certain ways. And a lot of people like to deride feminism, but true feminism is about being equal and not about, one gender being better than the other.
Domination, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's not about domination. So that is my perspective. Is I think it's very important for more men to be open and vulnerable. And it's interesting because I have a lot of friends, a lot of male friends, that find it quite easy to open up to me about their challenges. Not just people that I've dated. So I think it's very important for us to address this from the female perspective as well. Does that answer your question?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I got a question. You mentioned like a community support group, right? Around your mental health and everything. Where's the line between a community support group and like a bunch of people being in your business?
Privacy.
A good community support group has good boundaries, in my opinion. And there are support groups that, well, you can approach, and it's all voluntary. Now, that's a very interesting question, because you also have close family, members that you have to deal with. And so there's different, I guess, shades of this. But community support typically does involve close partners, family members, and ideally, it's sometimes it's challenging. Let me tell you that, because as someone who has been the significant other of a person with mental health issues, sometimes I had to be all up in my person's business, like taking.
Well, that's your business if it's your significant other, though.
That's right.
Right.
Exactly.
I'm talking about like the support group around you. Like, where's the line of what you share and what you keep? You know what I mean?
Right.
As far as when you resource that support.
Mm-hmm.
And even with that question, Paul, I'll not to redirect because
I mean, that's one for you too, Rev. Like you can.
Well, no,
answer
I was
this
getting
for
ready
both
to.
of you.
I was going to ask her because part of the difficulty that I face, not only in my church but in other churches that I support and minister to, that you might say shepherd. A lot of the difficulty is getting people. That's why I said I'm focusing on shame and dealing with the stigma of shame. Everybody knows that nobody's perfect. Everybody knows that somebody goes through something, and
But
yet
we'll use it against each other in a heartbeat.
right. Or it's like, okay, I appreciate you opening up and telling me about this struggle that you're having, but now we're just gonna make sure that we don't ever go over that way because such and such is a mess. And the question is, just piggybacking off what you said, Paul, this goes back to Jyoti, is where does that line go? How do you get to a place where, I guess my question would be, how do you get to a place where people understand what I would call the seriousness of privacy is how I put it.
Or boundary.
Boundaries, exactly. And that one of the things that I found in some of the support groups like we have for like Al-Anon, AA groups, people who have other addictions, people who have certain support groups that they use our church buildings and facilities, they understand that what is said here stays here. And I find that churches can be difficult. The scriptures talk a lot about gossip and how toxic gossip is to the foundation of the church. But how do you get people to understand, I guess my question, that you need this support and you need to open up and you need to get this help regardless? Somehow you need to make this imperative.
But I still need my protection.
Correct. Because there's no HIPAA laws around the church, right? But where do we find those safe spaces outside
or even a group community type of situation where people just get together once or twice a week and vent to each other? You know what I'm saying?
How do you set those boundaries, right?
Yeah.
How do you set them?
So good community support groups already have, they have structures in place already with boundaries. You have support groups by NAMI, which is the National Alliance for Mental Illness. You have Borderline Depression and Support, Alliance as well. So they have chapters in, I think most of the major cities, towns, and, anyone can start a support group. Again, privacy is very important, which means, even if I know you outside of this group, what we say in here stays in here. So you have to establish yourself as a safe person, first of all, and also develop very specific communication tools or learn very specific communication tools to be able to support the people that you're trying to help. Even with just like social, just social support. The one excellent book is called I Am Not Sick, I Don't Need Help. It's written by the psychologist, Dr. Javier Amador, and it specifically talks about, very specific communication, ways to communicate with people with these issues. And then the other thing is, just keeping keeping lines of communication open, because just because someone is going through mental health issues doesn't mean they're going to open up to you until they can learn to trust you. And so it's really on the community to, learn, equip themselves. And, there are times when you have to be patient. There are times when you have to, know when to probably give the person a nudge. It's an art and a science. That's all I can say about it.
So I was going to say, one of the things that I've kind of struggled with as far as not necessarily the opening up and things like that, but it's, for instance, with COVID, like Billy mentioned COVID earlier, and I found out, I kind of figured out I was depressed after the fact. And Billy mentioned that he, had some times where even with his children that he found out kind of after the fact. And then Jyoti, you mentioned that you and your father also kind of found out after the fact. Are there things that I'm sure there's warning signs and things like this, and I'm asking this for the people who are listening to this, obviously. Like, what are some of the things that you found, like, hey, this is kind of the trigger that let me know, like, that I should have found out beforehand that I was going through something?
Right. And I mean, it's not just my dad. I mean, even in my case, there are times when I have suffered bouts of depression as well. And, it's actually a very gradual onset. Different mental health issues have different symptoms, obviously. If you have someone with bipolar, the onset can be very rapid. And a lot of times the person doesn't even know that they're going through something because there's just a lot of confusion at the time. But that can also happen with, issues like anxiety and depression, because you get so caught up in, your feelings, just how you're feeling, your physical health all at the same time. So it's very hard to diagnose, but usually someone close to you, well, if you're in touch with this person, like very on an ongoing basis, they will usually notice that, the person is a little bit more, they're not as active as they used to be. They seem a little bit more down than usual. And close friends and family members notice that very fast. Unfortunately, in America, we also have an epidemic of loneliness, which is a public health issue. And so a lot of people won't realize that, they're struggling with something until somebody else reflects it back to them. So I remember even with my dad, I remember, he stopped being talkative as usual. He used to sleep more. Those are all symptoms that the person is going through something. They might get annoyed and irritated, or they might just, be watching too much TV. They might not be engaging with other people, like they might opt out of social activities. So it's a cluster of things that happen, and not just one or two things. And it develops over time. But at some point, people start to take notice. And I think, even if someone feels down, it takes them some time to notice as well. But eventually it catches up. The recognition of it catches up.
So another kind of thought that I had around this whole, like, I get the support group itself, but we always see people post online. If you just need somebody to talk to, I'm here for you. Like, kind of offering an olive branch. But some people, I get the courtesy offer, but some people ain't equipped to really be that person. I know with Billy, you being in the church, like,
you saw how vigorously I was shaking my head. Like, please don't always do that.
Yeah, there's conversations that that need, like, professionals, like they really do need professionals. Facts. But one thing that I've found also, as being, like, Joe, you mentioned that people find it easy to talk to you. People also find it easy to talk to me. But like, how, when those conversations are going on, how do you protect yourself from, like, pouring from a cup that you don't have anything left in? Because you still got regular work, you got your relationships, you got family issues, you got all these other things, and then somebody's giving you or at least loaning you their problems as you listen to them, and that can cause mental issues for you, or at least I would assume, because it has for me before. So I don't want to speak for you or Billy or even Paul on that matter, but I just wanted to kind of see what y'all thoughts were on that.
People talk to me too.
I know. Paul was like, wait a minute. Like, hold up.
But Paul keeps it real. He hurt their feelings back, so they don't really they don't come back. No, I'm just playing.
In a nice way. I'm not gonna lie to you ever. That's my actual problem.
It's funny that you say that, though, because you were literally, and it leads to a question I was going to actually throw out to Jyoti. But one of the things I was thinking about is how there are a lot of people who want to be a part of those groups in safe spaces, and they don't have enough self-awareness to realize that they're not safe. Like Paul is one of those people, he's self-aware enough to know, like, hey, I'm probably not the safest person. Why don't you call Billy up, because I'm not safe. But that's not I'm kidding.
Safe as far as it's not going any further, but
correct.
I'm not a delicate person to talk to. Because I'm going to ask you where you coming, what's your part in this, this situation?
And the irony of this is that one of the things that I experience, not in my local congregation, but once I branch out of it, for whatever reason, I don't give off the appearance of being a particularly safe person. Even though I'm here for the conversation all times, and the question that I would have, I'll just throw out there is, how would you recommend, and not just to the general public, but to somebody that you care about, how do you recommend you go about helping people know that you are a soft landing spot and you're a safe place for them? What are ways in which you can, for example, if I recognize Andre's not quite himself, he's a little more grumpy, he don't talk that much, or maybe he's not happy, or he's fighting more with his kids, like, how do you approach that without violating their personal space and privacy, without coming at them the wrong way? How do you just put it out there? Because sometimes saying, hey, if you want to talk, I'm here, isn't enough. How do you position yourself that way so that people know that when it happened? Because a lot of times people don't know they need it until they need it. Like, they're sobbing into their pillow and they're contemplating, unlifing themselves, and they're just in that spot. They don't know it until they need it. And that's when it's like, well, who can I go to? How do we position ourselves better to be that safe person?
Okay, can I add to and say, how do you become spot that he's asking you? How do you do that? And also not enable people to take advantage of you being that safe spot, safe, soft spot.
Say that. Okay.
Those are very good questions. So, I've been told that I have a lot of emotional bandwidth. And, I think sometimes it's just for the other people, they kind of realize people that are more empathetic, and they kind of gravitate to a personality like that. I think it's also very important to safeguard yourself, like with your own boundaries. Like Andre, you mentioned, it all depends on, for me, it all depends on my relationship with these, with these people. Like, if they're my friends, if I consider them, close enough, then I might involve myself a little bit more. Now, I might say something like, hey, I noticed that, you're not being yourself. And if there's something that's bothering you, feel free to talk to me about it, or, I can give you some resources if you like, and then just leave it at that. And that process really takes time and trust, because it is really for the other person to trust you to be a safe person. Right. It's not the other way around. You can't push yourself on people, just because you think that you're a safe person. And, I try to help people in my capacity as a friend, but I'm also very careful to tell them, look, I'm not a therapist, so I'm not going to give you advice. I'm a really good listener. But at the same time, if I feel like, there's a fine line. If I feel like they're abusing that relationship in terms of, just coming to me and opening up, but not really doing something about it, then I might put up a boundary and say, hey, I'm sorry, I lost.
No, I followed you, and because I had a question to go where you were going.
I did too, by the way.
And as far as mental health goes, right, and manipulation of you as a resource and a safe space, do you find in your own experience that the manipulation and the people seeking out the enablers are more on the addiction side or more on the chemical imbalance side, I should say. Am I saying that right? Because I don't want to say the wrong thing, right? Like, can help
No,
me?
I get your question. And I want to say that I'm not a mental health professional. I'm someone that has, I'm an advocate for mental health only because I've seen this, like I said, growing up, I've seen
Right.
this in family members, and I've had to learn about it. I went through a learning curve myself, in how to address and help people with these issues that were very dear to me. And so, it's all about learning good communication skills. And there's specifically a technique called the LEAP technique. It's called, LEAP. It's listen. L is for listen, E is for empathize. So listen is just like it's a reflective listening technique where you're just mirroring back what the person is saying to you without any judgment. E is empathizing with them. A is agreeing, and sometimes it's agreeing to disagree. It's, hey, you see your problem as one way, and I see probably having a different cause. And then P is for partnering on solutions. And so, either putting them onto more professional resources that can help them, just to make sure that, all the burden isn't falling on you. And when I say burden, I don't mean that they are a burden, but, mental
The
health.
responsibility, yeah.
The responsibility, absolutely.
It's not your job to clean up someone else's life.
Right.
They have to be able to do it.
I can be a supportive, compassionate presence, but but they still have to do the work. So you have to be very clear on your role, especially if you're not a professional. And the challenge is that mental health is so, it's so rampant. Mental health issues are so rampant that you have 1 out of 5 people with some sort of a mental health issue that goes undiagnosed. Also, funny thing is that a lot of people with mental health issues will actually downplay their symptoms, or they try to act normal, and that goes for me too sometimes.
Self-medicate.
Self-medicate, or it's just just act like nothing's wrong. Try to blend in.
Yeah, they mask it. They mask it. A lot of things.
Absolutely.
Well, I have a question because I sit in here with these clowns like every week, and I'm gonna let you minister to me today, okay, Jyoti? Because I actually trust you. You're a safe space for me today. So here's a question I'll ask you, but it is actually very important to me. I'm joking. I do trust Paul and Andre.
I was about to say, we can hear you, right?
Right. I'm here, bro. Right here.
But my question is this, and I appreciate you emphasizing and really, restating, like, listen, I'm not a mental health professional, because I've often, in my capacity in pastoring, I have to remind people that I've got tons of empathy, but I don't have tons of man hours in actual training when it comes to psychology. Exactly.
But however, I was gonna say the church setup is that the pastor is supposed to be this mental health expert. That's exactly
where I was going. You got to be the psychiatrist, the barber, the mechanic, the
why don't you bring someone in?
Well, no, I bring people in, but this is where I was going with her.
Okay.
When in the moment, there's not always time to bring someone in. And so my question for her was going to be, as someone who, this is an advocacy thing for you. This is personally important to you. And my question is, and I literally experience this all the time. You said a very important word, and it's a word that I use all the time, and that is bandwidth. How do you manage the bandwidth to be empathetic, to show compassion, to frankly give people the time, even as you go through LEAP? And I've heard that and I've used that many times. The ability to listen and be empathetic and to agree, or as you said, agree to disagree. All of those components, sometimes I don't have the bandwidth, even though I'm expected to always have the capacity to take Oh my gosh. Like I literally get phone calls all the time. Somebody saying, "Hey, I'm going through this with my daughter and this and that." And I'm thinking to myself, like, dude, I'm going through life challenges 10 times worse than that right now. But it's not a matter of how I don't expect them to be able to mirror for me, but how do you manage bandwidth? That is really, I guess, the question. How do you manage that when you don't always have it, but you understand that a person is coming to you with a very valid need?
Right. So that's a great question. So, I guess like I also have to recognize what my limitations are, and I'm not always on call. For example, except, it all depends on the severity of the issue. But if someone was in crisis, I mean, that for me is like, it doesn't matter what I have going on. If it's someone that's close to me, that matters a lot to me, I would have to drop everything I'm doing to be with that person. But that's only for very few in my selected
Right.
circle. And, if it's somebody that is a good friend of mine, but I let them know, hey, like, this might not be the best time for me to talk about it, but, can this wait until like this weekend? I mean, I have the relationship with my friends, and there are times I need to lean on my friends too. Certain friends, very close friends, we we recognize that we are all very busy professionals in our own fields, and so we have set aside a time to talk, let's say later in the evening. So it really depends on the severity of the issue, but you really have to make that call for yourself, and you can be on call all the time for people.
Right.
um,
Last follow up. I want to keep this coming. Hopefully Andre and Paul can learn something. So do you find yourself in a position where you said that people they kind of natively, naturally feel comfortable a lot of times opening up and talking to you? My question is, do you find that there's more men than women, or women than men who feel comfortable talking to you? Because honestly, I don't get very many men who feel comfortable opening up to me at all. It's usually women who do. And I wonder what your experience is with that.
I feel I've had, I mean, I think it's a good balance, but I find that more men seem to open up to me than probably to other people. So I think it also might be because it's probably easier to talk to a woman. And I already, I established myself as an advocate for mental health. It's very clear on my social media, and sometimes in the posts I put up. So, I think people get a sense that it's kind of that I have an understanding of things, that, I come from a non-judgmental place. And not to say that it means that you're judgmental or anything, Billy, but, it's, I guess, they just kind of see me as a neutral person to talk to. And sometimes it's easier to talk to a stranger than to talk to someone in your own life, to talk to someone that knows you or knows your family. I don't know if that answered your question.
Well, kind of. I was going to say I'm far less, just to be clear, I'm far less attractive than you are. So it's probably a lot easier to talk to you than talk to me. But then again,
I'll agree with that.
I was getting ready to say, because it can be hard, and I say that only because a lot.
You surely is ugly.
Yeah, but I bring that up because, frankly, a lot of people, from my perspective, a lot of people come and they're like, "Oh, she's really only talking to you because you're a guy, because she's trying to, feel you out, or she's trying to size you up, or she's trying to see if you're available. She's not really hurt." And I'm like, no. A lot of times when people are coming to you, even if they do find you to be attractive, they're not sharing some of the stuff they're sharing, hoping that would be a gateway for them to be able to find it. No. After you told me what you told me, yeah, we're cool. You stay right over there. But I find it that the reason why I bring that up is because I find that too often, in the church we call it lay people who are not in the clergy, they're not in ministry, and the same thing for mental health. A lot of times, people who are not trained professionals tend to feel like if it's somebody from the opposite sex, I don't really want to make myself available to help them with those things because they're very guarded. Like, what if they're going to want to date? Well, what do they get the blurred lines and get confused? And I only bring up, your experiences because, I wonder how you approach that. Do you look at that like, well, if a guy wants to come talk to me, are you skeptical that he sincerely wants to do the work that comes with getting the help and using you as a support to help him move forward? Or do you ever have that kind of, I don't know if I really want to because I don't trust that you're sincere? That's why I was asking that. Paul don't have those problems. Paul and Andre, they that's the ugly side of the show.
I'm a lead. I can't do the whole leap. I'm LEA. I stop at A. I'm not about to partner. Yeah, I'm about to partner with you on this. I'll listen. The P is how can I put it? It's in parentheses. It's optional. I will listen. I will empathize, and I will agree to disagree. And the work is on you, right? Like I can't. That's why I asked the questions I asked about boundaries and whatnot and enabling versus being a soft spot, like finding the balance in those sorts of things.
I appreciate this conversation. There's been tangible solutions that have been offered here. So hopefully people are actually writing things down and being able to take this information, because one of the problems that I've found is similar to follow me on this, is similar to like breast cancer and pancreatic cancer. The attention that we give in our country is based on breast cancer awareness, and they got the marches and they get all the headlines and everything else. But pancreatic cancer is actually like the most deadliest version.
Yeah. It's the one that you can have. 97% of people do not come back from it.
Right. And I think the same thing goes. And why I appreciate us having these offering tangible solutions is we are quick to throw out the National Suicide Hotline number. But every issue isn't to the suicide point. Like people, there's a large gap in between. I'm having a shitty day and I'm going to kill myself. But we don't tend to feel like the television doesn't tend to fill in those blanks.
No.
Like for what you can do. It's like, and the only way I'm mentioning calling National Suicide Prevention Hotline is if I see somebody posting something that seems suicidal. But we don't ever really truly offer solutions to like the in-between stages. And so that's what I appreciate about this conversation, if nothing else.
And even if to piggyback, and I'll piggyback on that, Andre, too, I especially appreciate the fact that none of us are medical professionals, because a lot of times people feel like the only way they can get help is to go talk to a trained medical professional, when the fact of the matter is, no, you can provide support even if you can't. Like me, I can't, put the sutures in. I can't cut you open and actually perform the procedure, put the rod in your leg or take the bullet out, but I can get you to the hospital. I can do things along the way. Like Paul said, which, is so appropriate. It's like, I can give you a leaf or a leaf or something, a P in parentheses. I may not be able to carry you the whole way, but that is not nothing. And it's so important that people understand to listen and empathize and agree to disagree. That is no small thing. Just because you're not willing to partner, maybe you don't feel safe. Maybe you don't feel equipped. Maybe you've got, like Jyoti was talking about boundaries. Maybe you've got too much on your plate right now to be a partner in helping this person go step by step along the way and doing the work. But it doesn't mean that you can't do anything. And too often, going back to the church thing, too often people feel like, well, I'm not a minister and I'm not a pastor and I'm not clergy and I haven't, gone to seminary, so then I can't do it. No, you can do a lot even without being all of those things and having those qualifications. So it is very important. We're gonna have to come up with another letter at the end of leap for Paul, because he's like, I'm not jumping with you. Okay, I don't even have a parachute. Matter of fact, I'm not going up in the plane.
But I think sorry, go ahead, Billy.
No. I'm just picking on Paul at this point. But go ahead.
No, I think it's
I'm
very
low-hanging fruit.
I think it's very important, even what Paul said, it's he recognizes that, what his limits are and what his boundaries are. And if
Absolutely.
it means, hey, look, I listen to you and I'll empathize, but, when it comes to solutions, like you really have to go find them. I mean, it's very important to know what your own boundaries are, but it's also very important. It's very good that, Paul is maintaining like a good, compassionate presence for the other person to be able to approach him, right? And I think we just need more of that.
What I'm saying is, I'll even work with a solution for you. That's where my A is. Like, we're coming with solutions, either tangible or intangible, right? And then at that point, we can agree to disagree. And if we agree, I'm not going to hold your hand and I'm not going to hold your hand through the work. Like, you actually have to do the work, because if I'm holding your hand through the work, I'm doing the work. I'm not the one who needs the work at this point.
But this actually does bring up a very good closing to this conversation, which is, and this is for the people who might be listening, who are considering approaching people for, support, the LEA portion of this.
Right.
When it comes to the P portion, if people are offering you solutions and agree to disagree or agree and everything, like, no, you got to do something. Like, yes. I need, because the worst thing that I find, and I'll let y'all speak on this, but somebody who comes to you with problems, you come up with solutions, you agree on the solutions, and they come back to you the next week, the same problem. Like, they haven't taken any steps to do anything to fix it. They just want to sit there and bitch and complain. Because, not to say that mental health is that, but if you return to me 3 weeks in a row with the same problem, at that point, you just want to bitch and complain. I'm gonna just call it what it is. And
maybe that's mental health too, but that I'm not equipped to deal with that sort of drama, in a patient manner.
The analogy I often give people, and this is people at church, obviously, most of the time, but even when it comes to, because I'm also a personal trainer, so a lot of times what I tell people is, if you call me up and say, hey, I'm moving next weekend, can you come help me? Then that means I'm coming to help you take a few boxes out to the car. I may help you wrap some bases or whatever. Don't call my 70-year-old mama and ask her to move your couch. She doesn't have it in her, that she's not capable. Let her do what she can, right? Let her, get the newspaper and the bubble wrap or something and pack up your fine china. Fine china never gets broken with my mom. I will not allow you to put her in a position where she's got to carry your bed out. And that's where the boundaries, Jyoti, she's brought this up a couple of times, but that's why it's so important that we understand those boundaries. People think, honestly, as a minister, they think hey, you love God and you got all this faith. You clearly have endless amounts of capacity and bandwidth to be able to take it all. And I'm like, right now, I've actually got the least. I actually, believe it or not, since we've been having this conversation, just got, it really did. I just found out that there's a lady at my church who just passed away.
Oh, damn.
And a lot of times what happens is I have to, and I've had to do the work to manage and compartmentalize in such a way, because I don't always have the ability. I can't just walk around saying, listen, I don't have time and I can't do this and I don't have the patience for this because I'm sad. Yes, I'm sad. Yes, I'm hurting over it. But I have to be able to know my limitations, where maybe I can't hang out. Maybe I can't take this phone call. People really get offended when you can't take their phone call, when you can't respond to them, when you have to change a meeting or something. But everybody, to her point, and I think it's so well put, everybody has a different bandwidth. everybody has a different set. Even professionals have a different set of boundaries. And it's important that we be able to recognize what those boundaries are for ourselves. I think that's, if I don't take anything else away from that for myself, it's really recognizing my boundaries and what I can and can't do.
I think that's very important. And I just also want to add that, people with mental health issues, like the more severe issues, I guess, are less likely to approach someone,
Yes.
in time. I think as a society, I just think we need to do better is just cultivate a culture of kindness and compassion, and just destigmatize mental health issues on the whole, just so that people are more apt to approach the right people with the right bandwidth, like professionals. And I think it's also quite sad that that getting help for mental health, like with a professional, that can be very expensive. And so we
Yes,
need
right.
better government programs, better funding for mental health issues. For example, like years ago, Texas was supposed to receive, this free federal dollars for mental health and, Medicaid expansion, and our governor
They refused it. Yeah.
refused it, and it was very shocking. And so we need better rehabilitation services, and a lot of these things are above our pay grade, as individuals. I say this as a caregiver who burned out 10 years ago, and then I had to focus again on myself and rebuild myself. And so I had to recognize that my limits are my limits. But I think as a society, this is very important to recognize this as a society, not just as people, because we have the saying, pulling ourselves by our bootstraps. And, a lot of times, we throw self-care out to people when what they really need is community care. And what I mean by that, not just one person, but just a supportive, group of people. So we just need better resources, and we need to support better resources, better resource building. So I know that's a very tough thing. That's a harder thing to take. Yeah.
So, for our listeners that are joining us by Spotify and other streaming services, that noise you just heard was our APB announcement. So, for this day in this episode, I'm putting out an APB based on the conversation we've had today. I'm looking for safe spaces created by men for other men. Is what I'm looking for, because as we've had this conversation around here, everything has turned to men can only talk, not only, but, not dealing in the absolute, but men talk to other women about the issues that they're having because they don't feel safe talking to other men about those issues. And it shouldn't be that way, because women can talk to other women about their issues that they're having. And it's received without judgment. It's received in a safe space, and it's received in kind. And I'm looking for men who can offer the same. We talked a lot in this episode about building up networks and building up communities, but the community can start with us. And anybody, as our guest Jyoti has mentioned, can begin one of these support groups. It doesn't necessarily have to have government funding behind it or anything like that. You just have to be willing to open your doors and say, hey, I'm here to listen, and it's safe to talk to me about things. So to make it nice and sweet, that's what I'm looking for, are other men to step up to the plate, to be there for other men.
I got nothing except my inbox is open if somebody needs to talk. So there, I'll volunteer myself as a safe space for men who need, even if I don't know you from a can of paint, you need somebody to talk to, hit me up. I got you. I got a few minutes for you. But you got to do some work, or I ain't going to keep talking to you.
Paul only got you for the LEA.
Paul only has the
P is
lowercase.
optional.
Yeah. No, Paul
P is-
Paul said that's the lowercase P.
Right.
Emphasizing there. You don't get any capital letters once you get the P.
Right.
But that's so important that you bring it up, Andre, and I appreciate that. That is that's everything right there.
Yep.
Because and then too, oftentimes people feel like that burden is maybe all on them because there's not enough others out there that are open and available to it. There's too many of us out here that, like Paul, we would open up our inbox. Just say it. Be willing to say it out loud. Be willing to put it out there. It's not going to hurt you, and don't allow yourself to be scared away by that one or two people that might exploit it or take advantage. Really understand, just knowing that somebody cares enough to be available, that goes a long way by itself. So just encourage that.
If having a conversation with me is the difference between you harming yourself and not,
or somebody else,
holler at me.
Yep.
I think that's an excellent APB, Andre, because especially like male mental health is also a topic that's very close to me because I've seen, my dad and other male members in my life go through stuff and not be able to talk to anyone about it, and especially if I think the existing patriarchal norms don't allow for it, like y'all said.
Yep.
I think it's very important for men to lead this change, but also for women to be on board with this change, and not make it look like it's a point of weakness. And I think there's a long way to go, because I will also say this, a lot of times women are just as responsible for spreading the patriarchy as men are. And that's part of also part of the patriarchal system, unfortunately. And I've seen that in India. There's a lot of misogyny, by women towards women as well. And it benefits no one. And so really, I'm, as much as I ask men to be feminists and not, and, I don't like to use feminism as a bad word. I also like women to be...
I say activists.
Activists, okay.
I just say activists.
Right.
We're all activists at the end of the day. If you're a human and you're getting treated poorly, I'm with you.
No, absolutely. And I also want women to be, activists for male mental health as well. I also want to say this in closing, that there is an excellent resource. She's a Belgian psychologist, and her name is Esther Perel. And she is one of my favorite psychologists that I listen to. And she has done this whole series on masculinity and, like how masculinity is changing and vulnerability and mental health for men. So I would encourage people to listen to that as well.
Awesome.
All right. Well, it's a wrap. We want to thank you once again for joining us. Yet another great time here at The Gray Matters. We want to say a special thank you to our guest, Jyoti Iyer, who we will definitely have to have back. It's been an enlightening conversation. And so we want to say thank you, all of you who are listening to us on our various platforms, those who have taken the time. We always appreciate it. Feel free to leave us comments. If you have questions, if you have topics or ideas that you'd like us to discuss on the show, please feel free to drop us a line and let us know. Give us all the feedback. We definitely welcome that as well. And once again, we look forward to seeing you next week. Be safe out there. Try to stay cool and be blessed.
Peace.
So a preacher, a stay-at-home dad, and a rapper walk into a bar. I am my ancestors back from the grave, no longer a slave, beat to the gods, kneel, pray, surviving my day. A threat to society, cause Malcolm showed me the way. I'm young, black, intelligent. Oh, now they afraid. It's too late, I am the king, I am the spark to the brain. I am the light that fought the dark, and now you're seeing the rain. I am the thing they spent their whole life killing. To find out, I am the rose that grew from under their building. This ain't for life, this is a fight so you can open your mind. Peel the scab back, reveal the blood, and see what we'll find. I promise. Like LeBron, I am just one of a kind. No longer will I accept the blind, leading the blind. Keep it a buck, say what I want, not giving a screaming afterward like Pac until the day my heart stops. And when I do, remember when I take my last breath, just remind the tape and witness all the knowledge I left. The grave. So I said, a preacher, a stay-at-home dad, and a rapper walk into a bar. The gray matters.